All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Jess.
And I'm Mackenzie.
And we are about to get into a very exciting webinar with all of you in just a few seconds here. But Mackenzie and I wanted to go through a few of the housekeeping points that we think will help you get the most out of our time here together today. So, Mackenzie, where should we start?
First, I want to draw your attention over to the questions section of your webinar console. This is the best place to get involved, get interactive, post all of your insightful questions, comments, feedback, and ideas. In fact, why don't you find the tab right now and give it a little test run by saying hi, hello, hola, whatever salutation you want to put out to the community today. And as a quick side note, that window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you have any technical issues during the webinar. Don't forget that a browser refresh should clear up most of the common issues. But if your slides or audio aren't working, feel free just to shoot us a message in the questions tab and our team will be happy to help.
All right, well, the questions tab was a great place to start because the next stop on our guided tour of your audience console is the handouts tab. Do spend some time in the handouts tab. There are so many wonderful resources and takeaways from our conversation here today. You are going to want those to follow up on this, I promise you. So go over to the handouts tab right now, start clicking on those links, download those PDFs, open those tabs, make sure you've got those set aside. Don't go anywhere just yet. Those are for later after we wrap the webinar, because right now you're going to want to stay with us. Not only do we have a very cool webinar coming your way, we also have a prize giveaway that we want you to have in mind, because that is coming at you at the end of our session. So we will have a $250 prize giveaway at the end of our webinar. Now, all winners do need to be here live and present at the webinar, and all winners must meet the prize terms and conditions. Those are linked for you in the handouts tab that we were just chatting about. So you can head on over to the handouts tab, click and scroll down, and you will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there.
Okay, Jess, I think that's everything for the housekeeping. Let's get this webinar rolling.
Let's do it.
Hey, Justin Mackenzie, thank you for those housekeeping tips and your usual high spirited. My name is Cindy Davis. I'm the content director for AV Technology, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this webinar on elements of a successful virtual production studio. As Jess mentioned, this is an interactive panel, and we hope that means you too. So throughout the webcast, please submit your questions via the question section of your console. It will take as many as we can throughout the hour, not at the end, throughout the hour. So next, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Absen, Ross Video, and Shure. And next, I want to bring in our speakers. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and provide a bit more information about themselves and their company to provide a bit of context as it relates to today's discussion. So, Neil, come on in. Neil, Ben, Matt, Dan, come on in. And Neil, if you'd start off, that would be wonderful.
Great, thanks, Cindy. I'm Neil Morrison, Vice President of Rental and Staging for Absen Live. Absen Live is a new division of Absen that's focused on live events and virtual production. Very excited to talk today about some products and solutions that we can offer to the market and see if we can help some folks out here today.
Wonderful. And Ben? I think, Ben, well, actually, you know what? Let's start next with Matt. Matt, hopefully you were able to hear me. My audio didn't
I can hear you.
Okay. So, Matt,
Gotcha.
Go ahead and we'll pick up Ben when he comes back.
Yeah, I'm Matt Morgan with Ross Video, and I'm our corporate business development manager, focused on the Northeast or the northern. Sorry, my title just changed, so now I'm just North American focused. So it's been a lot, but Ross historically has been a one of the leading broadcast manufacturers for many years now, and so we have a wide range of virtual solutions that we're able to partner with all types of customers for. So anything from stadiums to the news to things that you might find in corporate spaces and education spaces and everything kind of in between. So always good to be back here with you, Cindy, and on another conversation.
Likewise. Thanks for joining us again. So, Ben, we're going to cue you up again. Now, Ben's an audio guy, so, so Ben, if you would.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate being here. Yes, I am a market development manager for sure, and my focus is mainly the broadcast, Broadway, theater, live, location, sound, and other markets as well. So a lot of what I work with in the field and high-profile clients from Super Bowl or White House to the large three-letter organizations in New York City. A lot of those elements of broadcast are the same thing. Video without audio is just a silent movie. So having good audio and being dependable audio that sounds great, easy to use is definitely an element of a virtual production studio. And glad to talk a little bit about my experiences with that today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Dan.
Hello, I'm Dan Kretz, the president of Optigate Integration. And Optigate, we're based out of Seattle, Washington, but we're building stages all around the world. We have a few different divisions. We have our integration division. We have a management services division that we staff stages that we're building. We have a big training division that we're helping schools, Fortune 500 companies, et cetera, learn how to use their technology. And then we have an innovation division where we're working with a lot of the companies here like Absen and Ross, Shure Microphones, to put all the pieces together and make virtual production a little bit easier for the end user. So that's what we are.
Great. Thanks so much. So, I was able to take a peek at who's attending today, and you throw a party and you never know who's going to come. So really excited to see that we have a really great cross section of folks from IT, which is really amazing. IT is getting involved in this. Of course, a lot of AV folks through all kinds of vertical from corporate higher ed, government, and many more. So, honestly, whether you're in charge of broadcasting a town hall, producing virtual training series, which is becoming really popular, or launching a new product marketing campaign for a small or global corporation, or maybe you're in charge of expanding a university's remote and online learning program, creating a new film studio for students, which is really important because we need that in our industry. Across the board, it's absolutely critical to deliver a high quality video and audio experience. And the virtual studio has become a really great way to get there. So we are going to discuss the elements needed to create that successful, high-quality virtual production at a fraction of a cost as you would if you went outside. So I want to start off at a high level and define what a virtual production studio is. First, I think everybody kind of has an idea of what a regular production studio might be, but the other term that gets thrown around a lot is XR studio. So we have virtual production studio and XR studio. Matt, I know you have all the answers to this. So start us off and then everybody join in, please.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about what virtual is and the different elements of it. So you kind of have to start with your end goal in mind and what you want to go for. So for some people, virtual elements could be using AR, so augmented reality. So a really easy example, when my dad, who's technology kind of illiterate, goes, "What do you do?" I say that stuff on the NFL, when there's floating things above the field, using augmented reality, that could be parts of virtual, right? So you have a hard set, and you're using virtual elements to interact with and create more engagement for your messaging, to tracked environments. And that's basically where XR kind of steps in, and you have this, your camera tracks positioning, and the environment can move to what you're showing and what the camera can reveal, which can be set extensions and all these different things, which kind of put you into a whole new environment. And then also green screens and track lists environment. So you have one lockdown shot, and the shot stays the same, but graphics engine changes the perspectives of what you're seeing in an environment. So there's all these different ways to kind of say what you need or what the goal is, but basically, virtual can be anything from just floating objects to it could be leveraging a green screen for a background for a CEO to have a conversation with just a really sharp image behind them. And both are true and both are virtual elements, but it's how you want to use it. But I'm sure these guys can definitely kind of pick apart those things and expand on it for sure. So, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, your explanation is amazing. I think part of the confusion in the industry is that sometimes you hear LED volume, sometimes you hear LED wall, sometimes you hear XR, which maybe we're calling that set extensions. So I think because this is newer workflows, we're still trying to figure out the right terminology for it. But what Matt said is absolutely correct. And I think a big part of it is are you using tracking systems or are you not using tracking systems? Because that really changes the workflow of what your end result's going to be. And then when we talk a little bit here in a few seconds about different types of stages, we can get a little more into that.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dan. I think, one of the other things a lot of people point back to The Mandalorian, is really the big, I would say, an inflection point for virtual production. And that's sort of the pinnacle of virtual production for Hollywood studios, that sort of thing. And then how does that find its way down through the market, even down to the green screen type application? They all have reasons to be used and to be deployed for these kinds of applications. One of the things that I think is really important as you look at particularly the LED type environments is that yet another acronym, MR, that mixed reality that allows you to do foreground elements and set pieces in front of the LED wall to provide both a virtual and a real environment to really, I think, sell the reality part of the virtual reality. So I think there's all those things in between, and we hear lots of things, but I think that there's some general workflow guidelines that we should all look at, both as leaders in this area, and then questions that we make sure that we ask for people that are looking to get into this technology.
That great explanations, and I think it's interesting that I think what you're saying is XR, AR, and mixed reality can all be part of that virtual reality. The studio, and I think it sounds like it's matters of complexity. So I'd really like to get everybody into seeing some of the different types of virtual studios that you can make. And, Dan, let's start off because I know you brought some slides with you. So if you would just start off and with some great examples of the different types of studios.
Yeah, you bet. So because Mandalorian got mentioned, we'll start with, and this is actually a little bit bigger than that stage, but this is a stage that we're building up in Toronto right now. This might not be too applicable for most of the people on the call because it's not too applicable for almost 99.9% of us. There's only a few $300 million movies made every year. And so most people aren't installing these, but I think this is a good starting point because this is what we have in our head because of Mandalorian, because of Batman and some of these bigger movies. So we can fully immerse ourselves in these giant rooms and have hang points to hang ships, etc. And probably a lot of you have seen the making of The Mandalorian or the making of with the BTS footage of these large shows. And so we have people tell us all the time, like, oh, I understand it because I saw that making of. But I think it's not until you actually get in the middle of one of these stages and you're sitting there and you're seeing how all the technology kind of comes together with all the companies that are on this panel. And as the camera moves, we're running Unreal Engine, the video game engine in the background. So as the camera moves, the image on the wall moves in real time with it. It creates parallax. And in camera, it turns it 3D. And probably a lot of you understand that, but when you see it in person for the first time and you see what it looks like in camera, there's always that aha moment like, oh, now I get the technology. Okay. So that's kind of how it started, but that's not how most of us are using it. So kind of going down to the next size are our, this is a stage, the one on the right and left. These are stages that we just built in Dallas, Texas for Trilogy Studios. Dedicated stages for the one on the left for car processing, TVs and movies that need cars. And so now we don't have to block off streets anymore. And the one on the right, still a large stage, 157 feet long and 23 feet tall, great for smaller movies and episodic TV. Moving our way down, we're going to start getting into more use cases that most of us are going to use. The next one, this is kind of what started XR, the XR stage. It's maybe a corner stage that has set extensions. And what we're saying when we're talking about set extensions is when the camera goes past the LEDs, the world in camera, the world continues indefinitely. So let's use Fox Sports for an example. The stage, when you're watching television, it looks huge, but actually the actual studio isn't that big. And the reason they're able to accomplish this is because everything's an LED that they're inside of. And when the camera pans out or goes to the left or right of the LED, that world continues. This technology becomes very, very important for Fortune 500 companies, 100 companies, high schools, colleges. Probably we do a lot with medical companies that are trying to do trainings. So this technology really starts spreading the use cases, because now we're getting smaller, and these are most of what we're installing. This and even smaller, which you'll see in a second, stages like this that are great for podcast rooms, smaller companies. And as long as you have those LEDs in front of you, again, we can add set extensions and using some of, again, the technology of the other panelists, and we can make worlds that are much bigger than the screen size itself. So we're going to install big studios around the world over the next 5 years. There'll be a few of them, but there's going to be thousands and thousands of these smaller studios popping up as people get used to the technology, understand how it works, and the integration gets easier and easier.
So don't go to the next slide.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Dan, I think, there's a lot of educators on the call today. And I think if you, at a university or even high school level to some degree, having a small volume or a small wall like this allows you to do the building blocks and understand the workflow in such a way that it's really just some very logical building blocks to get you to that large stage. So for those students coming up, to learn these workflows and learn the different parts of an ecosystem around virtual production is critical to bringing people into the industry.
Well, absolutely. And I think for us, and this, I'll say this a little selfishly, is because we have a management services division and we're staffing the stages we build, there's just a shortage of talent right now because this is newer technology. So a big initiative of OpticAID is to be helping those high schools and universities build these stages. We're actually doing them at cost. So if you're on the call and you're a university or a high school, man, we would love to help you, because for us, the more people that get used to the technology, understand, I do a once a month class with 3 different universities. So this is really important because we need that next generation of storytellers to really understand virtual production. So yeah, and it's like Legos. If you're working in front of a small screen, it's really the same once you jump into a giant screen. So the tools are the same and the training is the same.
I know that's that training and is an issue across our industry, really. We do have, let's see, actually, could you repeat the images from the different types of studios? So if you want to, let's go through, Dan, if you go through the different types of studios again, that would be great.
Sure. So this is a large volume. This is actually 6,000 LED panels. We're putting this in Toronto. This will be the second largest stage in the world. Kind of working our way down into, and I can send slides to people or renders to people if they want them later. Car processing, kind of episodic TV. The stage on the right, we're building a similar stage in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in Atlanta right now. We have our, let's call this the XR stage, corner stage with set extensions, and then working our way into smaller commercial stages. We're putting a lot of these in for production companies, ad agencies, larger corporate companies. And then finally, this is actually, we're doing one for New Tech School in Spokane, Washington, and it's about the size of one of these. We'll put that in a couple weeks, and then we'll support that school in their training program. And then in Bellevue, Washington, we're doing this for a small company just in downtown that wants to do corporate trainings in front of it. So that's a really popular size as well.
Great. So Matt, I want to hand that over to you next, actually, because probably many of the people on this in our audience, and all of us certainly, were at Infocom, and you were part of Avixa TV. So go through a bit of what that was made up of.
Yeah, absolutely. So Avixa approached us after we were at an event that Avixa was putting on, and they had this idea of wanting to engage more of the market, and the word demystify kept coming up. How do we demystify virtual production? How do we engage the viewer on the other side of a screen, and also how do we keep people engaged who are in the room? To what they see in front of them isn't necessarily what's being broadcasted out. So we did a couple things with them. So this is a general overview of the Avixa TV set that we provided. So we created this tracked and a trackless environment. So the tracked is like the AR elements, those augmented reality elements. So like you can see here, that display is just a piece of augmented reality. And we had slides go up there. So as different presenters came in, different manufacturers came in and talk about their solutions or whatever it was, we were able to feed content separate of the broadcast into that space. So something that's not there, we were able to put up. So in a corporate environment, maybe you don't want to have a screen somewhere, and you need the space to be more flexible, different uses. We're able to kind of show how you can do that in real time and how you can do a presentation without having a physical display. And then we also created this trackless environment with one fixed camera, and the environment could move and it could change, and you could do virtual zoom ins and zoom outs and things like that. And we were basically able to do 3 different types of segments for them. So we had this Avixa TV studio headquarters type of set. We also had a school me set, and we had there was like a courtroom type of set. I forget what they called it. But the idea behind it was, how do we capture engagement live real time while we're on the show floor? And also people aren't able to be here and they might watch later, and they're able to use these virtual environments to even categorize visually what they are, what they're talking about, what the content might be that you're about to consume. So as someone goes to Avixa, online, and they do their exchange platform, you as someone who's continuing to, consume content can go to that page and without reading a title, see what type of content you're about to consume. So we were able to do a full studio on a show floor, which I was super proud of, because normally it takes days to just build a studio in general. And we were able to deploy one on the show floor. But the cool thing about it is, again, we were able to kind of demystify what this is and tangibly show people the different elements and what you need to create a studio and the different types you could create, So we do this all the time with a lot of customers. And again, it could be something like this where you're just leveraging a green screen. I didn't bring a picture of that green screen back there, but all this was a green screen. There was no LED involved. And the idea behind it was just to show that you can start to do virtual today that's relatively cost effective and very easy to get into, and grow into like those LED volumes where it can become more interactive or sharper images, things like that, by leveraging your backdrops, things like that. So that was a really cool one. Very proud of that set, and we're going to continue that partnership at some of the trade shows coming up. But yeah, they're just an easy way to show people that you can too jump into virtual, today, to kind of check the boxes of way to start getting some increased engagement, whether it's an internal audience or an external audience.
I saw that that virtual studio there, the green, set up a green screen, and pretty amazing. You guys all did an amazing job, and I know Shure was part of that. So Ben, obviously audio is critical. I mean, there's a lot of elements critical, including video, and Ben's video keeps on going off for some reason. My apologies for that. But Ben, if you could, talk about the different types of audio that might be used in different use cases. And it's possible that Ben didn't hear me. I think he didn't hear me.
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. So if you could just share some different use cases, different types of virtual studios, in what microphones would be leveraged.
Well, thanks. Yeah. To extrapolate on what Matt was saying, we sponsor the Avixa TV studio, and we're using a combination of. It really kind of depends on what the out form factor is. If you need Dante or you need the remote control, are you going to what recording medium? Is there a location sound mixer involved that's going to be capturing the audio separately? What the preference for the talent is as far as wearing a microphone headset. Do you want the microphone to be visible? Do you want to hide it? And also, dealing with the RF landscape of wherever the studio may be located. Of course, Infocom was quite a challenge with all the amount of wireless happening, and just, not only the location in Vegas, but all the other manufacturers having their microphones there too. So trying to find some spectrum can be challenging, but the more flexible the wireless system is, the better off you're going to be, and it allows you to concentrate on just making the production successful as a whole. Nobody really complains, of course, when everything works, right? The video works good, and the background and the audio sounds good, but of course, as soon as there's a dropout or one little blip in the audio, then everybody loses their mind and starts having some serious conversations. So a lot of it, I would say, is kind of a trickle-down approach. What we see in the larger studios, the big three-letter organizations in New York, all the way to the largest stages, the largest performers. That type of technology tends to be a lot of the same with the virtual production studio. Going virtual means going possibly a little bit smaller, and maybe hopefully trying to trim expenses, or maybe it's a location-based asset. Like if you don't want to travel to the studio, you'd rather have set one up in your corporate office or the White House, or you name it. And a lot of those same wireless or the audio technologies go hand in hand. Of course, we can't forget about the other elements like shotgun microphones and dynamic microphones like the Shure SM7, if that's appropriate on camera. Whatever the tools may be, but normally it's usually a lot of what we see that's tested and proven time and time again to make the audio complete. And the larger studios is what we see in a lot of the virtual production studios.
Nice. Before we move on, I'd like to ask our audience a question. I'm assuming that you're joining because you're interested in the topic. So first, before you answer my question, do you already have a virtual production studio in your organization or not? And then answer all at the same time. For what purpose are you looking to create a virtual production studio? So if you could throw those answers in the question tab, that would be great, because we'd love to hear that. And just share some. Let me go back. There's a question for Matt or Ben, since you're both there. With the yellow set background, did you say it was a green screen or background? It is a green screen. But how did you handle the reflection of the background on the floor? Can either of you speak to that?
Yeah, I'll just go back to it. Is this the? I'm assuming this is the image you're talking about. This is all a virtual environment, every bit of it. So behind them on the show floor was just a green screen, and the reflection and everything that's done is done in the engine that's driving this, which is our Voyager engine, is what drives this in the background. There's a lot of others, and typically they're driven with Unreal Engine. But at the end of the day, everything that you see here was very intentional. The client, Avixa, they wanted it. And with virtual, what you don't want to lose, and Ben can talk to this too, is, or Dan, sorry, both probably can. But what you don't want to lose when you're in a virtual environment is a realistic element being reflections and shadows and things like that. You don't want it. We know that this isn't real in our minds, but we also, in our minds, have to have some sort of reality, being those shadows and those reflections that actually draw us in and let us focus on what's happening versus the environment that it's in, right? The environment becomes a part of your engagement and the experience of the audience to engage, right? And so we want to make sure that as we create those different elements, whether it's a full XR studio or a trackless environment using a green screen, that we have that bit of reality that the mind needs to perceive what is actually happening. So, but yeah, I'd throw it over to Dan. I'm sure he's done a lot of these as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reflections, you're right. I mean, the nice thing about the new technology, like with Absen panels, our Dallas stage, we just put in the Absen Live panels, I think 3,000 of them. And they have such a high refresh rate and scan rate that now with our LED processing, we can do some things. You've probably heard of ghost frame or frame remapping. So we can actually capture in camera the perfectly reflected image that hopefully needs very little in post. And we can also capture a green screen version at the same time, which gives us a lot of flexibility, being able to have both, because you're getting those real-time reflections, but if you need to make changes, you can. So that's just one other kind of cool thing as this technology evolves and the technology gets better and better. Just real quick, because I saw in the question, I don't know, Cindy, if there was a question about lighting and matching lighting. So if you don't mind, maybe I'll jump on that, because that's such a big piece of what we're doing. LEDs, let's say you're going with LED. They're incredible, and you do get those reflections. And if you're on Mars, you're going to be in this orange glow, which is incredible. But LED panels still are not great for lighting people naturally. The CRI, et cetera, just isn't high enough. The main companies like Absen are working on that, and it's getting better and better, adding white and amber and cyan, et cetera. But in the meantime, we still need to use practical lighting in addition to the LED environment. And so, we do that with your typical lights, your aperture lights and your sky panels and orbiters, et cetera, that you're probably all familiar with. And then we can tie those into the environment, even through Unreal, because we can set up, DMX controls, and we can control either Unreal through the GrandMA or trigger things through Unreal Engine. And we can make everything seamless and perfect in the scene, so it all works together. We just did a music video a couple weeks ago. It'll come out at the end of this week for Lainey Gardner, who is a country artist. And when you end up seeing the video, there's lightning in the video, there's fire in the video, there's all these different elements. And we were able to trigger everything live right through Unreal Engine that was triggering not only the scene, but also triggering the practical lights that were surrounding the LED volume. So some pretty cool stuff.
So quick question, I'm sure for Neil, how to avoid or minimize the moire effect? Because I know everybody thinks that you've got to go with the smallest pixel pitch, and you don't want to have too big of a pixel pitch, but I know there's a balance in there. So is it all about pixel pitch, and as far as the moire effect?
No, in short, it's not all about the pixel pitch. There are many other tools, whether it's starts to do some of the COV coding, things like that that help with Moray, but also when you're doing productions like this, planning your lensing and planning your depth of field so that you have more of a natural fade of the background. A lot of the what we call plates that are played back on the LED wall are actually defocused quite a bit, again, that proximity between the talent and the wall, you really want to make sure that that's helping you to soften that backdrop a little bit. Most every LED wall, if you zoom in on it and you focus directly on the LED wall and wiggle the camera around, you're going to see Moray. Smaller pixel pitches don't always help with that. I always tell people smaller pixel pitches, bigger budgets, because you have to fill more space, or fill more pixels with your content production. But I think when you see a lot of both for television and for films, these backdrops are really softened quite a bit, so you really lose that screen door effect, which creates the moire. We do a lot of camera testing ourselves with clients to be sure that what they're trying to achieve with the product is going to be acceptable for what they need, or even more than acceptable, really ideal for them. And quite often, that little bit of defocus of the backdrop content is very helpful. And if you need that really high, very, very high clarity of content, to do it as an AR element in the foreground, or some other means. But really, that big pop is what tends to drive the moire to extremes where it really becomes visible, which you see a lot on concert videos and things like that, because they're really not concerned with that aspect. But in a production environment where you can control the depth of field and the lighting so that you're opening the iris more and getting a shorter depth of field, really allows you to take that phenomenon out. Also, a lot of cameras have some filters in them that allow you to minimize moire as well.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about the system. We talk about ecosystem in many other areas of our industry, but the ecosystem is particularly important here. So let's, what is the ecosystem? Where do you start? Besides calling you folks, Neil. So if we can go back to you, kind of frame that ecosystem, if you would.
Sure. I think anytime we embark on a project with a client for virtual production, we get calls a lot, just say, hey, I want to buy an LED wall for virtual production. That generates a lot of questions for us right away. What is your use case? What kind of cameras are you using? What kind of servers are you using? And I think a lot of times people haven't considered that. They just sort of, maybe saw a video online on virtual production, or have read some things about it, and they're interested in it, but they don't necessarily have put all the tools together. So that ecosystem is critical for success in these volumes, and I think why Dan's business has grown, exponentially, is because they really are that solution provider, and you want to be sure that you're just not sort of buying disparate elements of technology. You're really looking at all of them to work together cohesively to meet your use case. What we suggest for product is sometimes different for a fixed use case studio that has a certain camera they've specified versus what we would call more of a black box studio that is open for anybody's camera to come in. We're going to want to understand that use case more. The servers that are involved, I think Ross has a really good functional ecosystem with their Voyager systems that they have, but there are other ones out there that are more disparate components of just a server and just cameras and things like that. So I think it's really important when you're considering putting together a virtual studio that you consider that whole ecosystem. And I would go so far as to say, get all of the different players together on a phone call, conference call kind of thing, to talk about the use case and be sure that you haven't missed anything. Because I think the biggest challenge we have in the industry is when people don't consider that whole ecosystem. They just kind of go out and pull things off a shelf, and then they get a bad result.
So this is going to be like a presidential debate. So Matt, you're mentioned. You're up.
Yeah, I was going to say to keep going off what Neil said, it's so important to find a partner like Dan, to find who knows every piece of the puzzle. So when we look at AV as legacy AV, the idea is that we can take a bunch of different pieces of gear, different laptops. I have Apple, someone else might have a Dell, all these different things, and you feed it into a system, and the AV does the AV things in the background, and it spits out on one image, right? It doesn't care what it is. It changes the refresh rate. It changes all these different things, and it pushes it out. That's what legacy AV does. When you start getting into broadcast, that's where there's a huge difference. You have to be in the same frame rate, same refresh rate across the board. So when you talk about ecosystem, that's everything from if you're doing it live, we're going to do it live, and you have a switcher, that has to match the frame rate of what's going to an LED wall. And your cameras also have to match. So to expand on the moire effect more, you also have to make sure that your cameras and your LED processor are putting out the same refresh rate. And if you don't, that's where you might have this like ghosting look effect where it looks like you have haze in the room, but there's nothing there. I know that a lot of churches go through this because they might partner with an LED manufacturer and they think, I'm getting a great deal. And they might be getting a great deal, but then, the color could look blown out and you have this moire that's like on a different level. And that's a part of it, right? It's finding all of the pieces, making sure that as you're building a solution, you can definitely do it piece by piece. You don't have to start day one, go into like XR mode and everything. You can build on it. But as you build, you want that ecosystem that you're building to all speak the same language, if you will. So finding the right partner who does understand that and can grow with you as you're ready to grow and give you the knowledge and give you the support you need from a partner and from a manufacturing partner perspective is super important for sure.
Absolutely. I'm going to cue this next question up for Ben. And I know that, I'm sure Matt and Dan have something to add to this. Do these systems also have the capability to apply effects processing to audio to account for inside or outside virtual environments? Or does this need to be adjusted in post?
That's a great question. I mean, the running joke is always like, let's fix it in post, right? But when you're doing a live event, that's not really an option. To kind of circle back a little bit on that realism or some of those artifacts, they may be desirable. We talked a little bit about reflections and almost that too sterile feeling of being like it's a virtual or AI generated type of situation. Some realistic sounds from the crowd or other surroundings can add realism to the broadcast if that's what you're attempting to do. Maybe you are going for a really polished look, or maybe you're looking for some realism where it doesn't feel like it was done all CGI or something in that nature. So there's a little bit of both. There are some tools that are widely available to do things in real time or near real time. Reducing reverb in the room or, echoes or undesirable sounds and noise cancellation. There's many different technologies out there, not just from Shure, but other manufacturers as well, that is really being pulled into the forefront lately with a lot of the technologies that are being used in what we're doing right now, like, conferencing and virtual conferencing and such. So I'd say a little bit of both, but, the golden rule with audio is that, it's like garbage in, garbage out. So you don't want to try to make the capture of the audio as good as possible to begin with.
Yeah. I also,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you can elaborate on this, I'm sure, part of that ecosystem. And then to pick up too on what Ben's saying, audio delay, when you're doing a live production, when you add virtual elements into it, no matter what kind it is, you're going to have some latency that's added into that audio stream. So I didn't want to get through this whole thing without bringing that to light, because it's so easy for us to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and then get to day one. And we're super excited to hit record or to go live, and we go to our stream and our broadcast, and audio is off. And it's not the audio guy's fault necessarily, but we have to have the tools that are there to bring audio and video together. So I didn't want to miss that point.
No, you're right, Matt. And so building that in, so you've got the right boxes, right, to be adjusting that delay. You know, when we build stages, we try to minimize it, but you're still going to have a couple frames, you know, at best. And so you have to account for it. And you know, it's interesting on these stages, because I think, you know, part of the initial question was, let's say you're in a cave and you want the audio to sound like you're in a cave, right? Not like you're on a stage. In our stages, we, like in our Dallas stage that we just finished, we installed an Avid S6 console, if you're familiar with those. A beautiful console, Shure microphones. And we can run plugins in real time to, you know, simulate the environments in which the actors are acting. So that way we're getting the audio that we want. So we have to do less in post. So we are thinking not only from you know, how do we soundproof and how do we, you know, minimize artifacts of sound, but now we're adding sounds in, or adding, you know, again, effects in real time to adjust to the environment that people are seeing.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I think,
I want to. Please.
Sorry, Cindy. So yeah, I was just going to say, just as a kind of a capstone to the ecosystem, a well-designed ecosystem for virtual production creates an incredibly efficient workflow and allows you to actually save money. Sometimes there's a little bit more of an initial investment on the studio, but when you think about things like the audio, that you can control that environment, and you end up doing far less dialogue replacement down the road. When you think about trying to shoot outdoor scenes that, you know, if you have to shoot them at different times, there's continuity problems. You know, there is within the production community still a lot of concerns about health and safety. So keeping a very small group of people together for a production. So the efficiency of virtual production is really, I think, what's going to drive it forward most quickly, because it is saving time, it is saving money, it is a safer way to work. You know, but I think if you don't plan well for the ecosystem, the inverse can be true. It can create a lot of challenges further down the road.
Great, thank you. I want to ask another question to the audience, and then I'm going to want to get some answers to some questions that have come in. So to the audience, if you have not started a virtual production studio, what are some of your barriers to entry? And maybe we can answer some of those now. And then a question that has just come in. Do these systems, nope, I already did that one. My campus still is using yesterday's production technology. Interested in seeing how these things can be done differently. Just people that were replying to my earlier question. Now they were flipping all over the place because a lot of them are coming in. Here's a good one. Barriers to entry are rooms I'm given. We have a small booth that wasn't sound treated. Any suggestions there?
I mean, really straightforward. I would, again, say don't be scared to take the plunge if you're able to start getting into it. It doesn't have to be an expensive solution. It doesn't have to be the pro level, you know, what we have in our head, Mandalorian solution. We have clients that are major clients in the corporate space who are in New York, who are literally given a conference room like I'm sitting in, and they have a green screen, and this is what they use. They have a virtual environment behind them that they can switch a backdrop for, and it's in a conference room. It's surrounded by glass, so they just do the best they can. They bring down the shades. They get good microphones and they capture it well. You want to make sure that you have the best mic that you can get. Again, crap in, crap out is going to allow you to have good audio and kind of mitigate some risk. But I would say don't let that be a showstopper for you. get good microphones is what I would even say to start for. Like, go that route, invest wisely, and grow as you're able to, you know.
So what about scaling? We've got actually a few questions here. It's like, I want to start off. You just want to start. You don't want to start with this huge studio. So can you scale this?
I just saw someone say funding wants to sponsor us. That's pretty funny. Yeah, you can absolutely scale it. And again, I would go to a partner who has experience like Dan or someone similar who could take you through all of these different steps, of the smallest up to the whatever your hopes and dreams are. It's absolutely scalable. For us, Voyager, that back end of this virtual is the same whether it's a trackless green screen environment or an XR studio. So it's all about starting with the partners and the manufacturers that you want to grow with, and that can also grow with you. If they can't answer growth questions, then maybe, reconsider that. But yeah.
Yeah. Neil, I'm going to put that same question to you, actually. Sorry. Neil, what about scaling? I mean, they invest in some LED, whatever you want to call them. They don't want to throw that investment out.
Indeed. Yeah, it's always scalable. I think that, one of the things that Dan is doing is they're building, small volumes, medium volumes, large volumes. I think there's never going to be a time where a small volume that was, I've done some corporate installs that literally were a small conference room like Matt's in right now. And that's used as frequently as the larger volumes. So the important thing, I think, is again, in the scaling aspect, to be sure that you understand the environment that you want to have in that ecosystem. All of the other tools, the ancillary tools outside of the display that you would get from Absen are infinitely scalable. You can keep going and going with servers and cameras and things. But starting with those initial building blocks is quite important as you grow.
And
sorry, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, there's some pieces that you can't sacrifice on, right? So because the system just won't work, and it'll be frustrating, and you'll be, man, why did I not just buy the better version of that? One example is a Genlock box. You go online and you can find a lot of them, but what you'll find in reality is that there's only two that all studios use, and that's because they work. And yeah, they're a little expensive. You might be, $12,000 to $14,000 for your Genlock. However, it's going to work. Now, another example is the tracking system. You can put in a Vive Mars. We do that for most schools, and it works great. It's an incredible training tool. They learn how to use it, and it's $5,000. You can scale all the way up to what we're putting in Atlanta right now. It's $1 million for the tracking system. So there's some things that you can really pare down and start. You start with a green screen. You start with a small tracking system. You get ROS, incorporated in, and we can build and build and build, as it allows, as budget allows. And then there's those few things, again, that it's worth talking to somebody in the industry, an integrator, someone that's doing it, just so you don't have those pitfalls and you're trying to return gear that just ends up not working.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
So,
I saw the other question regarding NDI, Cindy, yes, integration of NDI and even now 2110 is most of the Brompton processing and a couple of the others do have 2110 built in already. It certainly is going to be the transport of the future. So we're absolutely all of us committed to being sure that we have all those pathways, particularly for enterprise level organizations that need to move across geographies with video reliably. So NDI, SMPTE 2110, all day long.
One thing while we're talking about 2110, because it's a big part of what we're doing, kind of pushing technology forward and what we're able to do remotely. And it ties into small spaces. We're actually doing some tests right now between Dallas and Seattle, where we're running our Seattle stage, which is, I think, a 7-node LED volume. We're running that from servers in Dallas, and we're doing it with only 12 milliseconds delay. So a half a frame at 24 frames. So pretty cool. And the reason that this is important to us is, as we're working with schools, or, corporate 500 companies, or whoever you are, you might have a space to put a small studio, but that doesn't mean you have a server room, with the power and the cooling, and all of this. All of a sudden, you've tripled the cost of your build because you have to build the infrastructure in your facility. So what we're working on, and within a year from now, I'm sure we'll have it running, is that we'll be able to supply servers remotely, LED processing servers, all of the electronics that would get racked remotely, and you'll be able to run your stage from wherever that is in the country. And the goal is to save everyone money.
Great. So we're come up on the hour very quickly. And Dan, it sounds like, you just gave your kind of, your big takeaway there to save everybody money. I'd like to ask other panelists if you had a key takeaway for folks either wanting to expand or really start their studio, virtual production studio. What would that takeaway be? And Neil, why don't you start off with that?
Sure. I think ask lots of questions. Be ready to really take in a lot of information for your project or projects. Talk about scalability. These are critical in developing a virtual production studio and also a long-term strategy. And give us a call. We'd like to, be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. And Ben?
I'd say very similar, try to preserve the kind of content that you're looking for with the best audio quality you possibly can. We talked a lot about like the content going in is the content going out. So you want to make sure that whatever you can do to make the space sound a little bit better, grabbing the best microphones you can afford, and testing it out, making sure you're familiar with the process so that you can have a very highly effective and repeatable environment that sounds great, and then everything else will follow.
Repeatable. That's a really good takeaway just in itself. It's like it's got to be able to be repeatable. And Matt.
Yeah, I would. I just continue off what Neil mentioned with keeping the long term in mind. Thinking past today, but thinking a couple years down the road. If you're truly starting from ground zero and you want to grow into something, what's it look like for your program? If you're a school, 3-5 years from now, if you're a corporation, what's it look for you in your goals for messaging, 3-5 years from now, and take what you can do today to build that solid infrastructure and core that can grow. And that's getting the right partners for both your implementation and from the manufacturer. You want to make sure that you do ask a lot of those questions and think of the end goal and how you can get there so that expensive gear doesn't become a nice paperweight down the road. You want it to all be something that can grow with you and be functional as you continue to need additional function.
Yep. And Cindy, just real quick, and I know we're at the end, but I would say tour facilities that are already running. So, if you're a school, other schools that are running, if you're a corporate and you're wanting to do that, go see it. If you want to make movies, go see it. We're a pretty small industry, so we're all pretty willing to, tour and help each other. And if you need help finding a stage that's running, I think everyone on the panel here is a part of a lot of those, so they can probably make the introductions.
Absolutely. Great tip. Perfect final takeaway. So I want to thank our sponsors, Epson, Ross Video, and Shure. And drumroll, please, because we've got a grand prize winner for the $250 Amazon gift card, and that is Kyle Farrow from Pennsylvania. Our team's going to reach out to you. So again, I want to thank our panelists, Neil, Ben, Matt, and Dan, for a really great discussion. And of course, I want to thank all of you in our audience for your great questions. Let's keep the conversation going and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.